Today, the FIFA World Cup is watched by over half the planet. Billions of people, hundreds of nations. The biggest sporting event in human history. But what if I told you it almost never happened? Not because of politics, not because of money, because nobody wanted to get on a boat. Let's go back to 1930. FIFA announces the first ever World Cup, hosted in Uruguay to mark the centenary of its independence. Europe's response? Silence. England says no, Italy says no, Spain says no, and guess what? Germany says no. Oh, with the same excuse. America is too far, too expensive, too much of a hassle. 2 months before the opening match, the European bracket is empty. The first World Cup is on the verge of collapse. And the only thing standing between disaster and history is one desperate man, a luxury ship in a 15-day journey across the Atlantic, and nobody was prepared for. The man is FIFA President Jules Rimet, and he's panicking. He travels across Europe, knocking on doors, calling in every favor he has. After weeks of negotiating, he scrapes together just 4 European teams willing to make the trip. France, Belgium, Yugoslavia, and Romania. Romania's story alone is worth the video. Their squad isn't stars or professionals. They're factory workers, ordinary guys with ordinary jobs. The only reason they're going to Uruguay at all is because their king, Carol II, is completely obsessed with football. Caro doesn't call a coach. He doesn't consult a technical director. He picks the squad himself, like a man doing his fantasy football team on a Sunday morning. Then he finds every player's employer and delivers a royal command. Give these men 3 months off, and their jobs had better be waiting when they get back. No discussion, no negotiation. The king has spoken. Rimet finally has his 4 teams, and every one of them has to get to Uruguay the same way, by boats, together on the same ship. SS Contiveri, a luxury Italian ocean liner, about to become the most awkward floating hotel in the history of sports. Now picture it. You're a footballer in 1930. You just said goodbye to your family for 3 months, and now you're stuck on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic with the exact guys you were about to compete against. And somehow, you still have to show up fit and ready for the biggest tournament of your life. So, what do? You run laps on the opening wooden deck. You do gymnastics on the rocking ship. Practice ball control while the ocean tilts the floor beneath your feet, terrified of kicking your only football into the sea. Meanwhile, a few doors down, Jules Rimet is relaxed in his first-class cabin with a solid gold World Cup trophy tucked casually inside his leather suitcase under the bed. No guards, no safe, no security, just the man, his bag, and the most valuable prize in the history of sport. Halfway through the journey, the Contiveri stops in Rio to pick up one more team, Brazil. Now, 5 rival nations are crammed onto one boat, eating at the same tables, training on the same deck, tearing each other down over breakfast every morning. The tension must have been extraordinary. And here's another twist. Egypt was supposed to be there too, the only African nation invited to the first World Cup. But they never made it. A weather in the Mediterranean delayed them. They missed the ship. One storm, one missed departure, when the first World Cup goes from 60 teams to 13. Football history changes before a single kick. By the time the coast of Montevideo appears on the horizon, these men are exhausted, sick, and completely out of rhythm. And what they find when they step off the boat makes everything worse. Bulawayo promised the world a brand new 1,900-seat stadium, the Stadium Centenario, custom built for this tournament. When the Europeans arrive, it isn't finished. Months of rain have turned the construction site into a swamp. Workers are still pouring concrete. Drains are still going up. The stadium meant to host the greatest tournament on earth looks like building sites with a scoreboard. But where do these teams play their opening matches? Tiny local club stadiums, half empty, barely lit. One group stage game draws a crowd of just 300 people. 300! It could fit them in a school canteen. These men crossed an ocean for this. Then the tournament gets genuinely insane. Now meet Giorgio Stabile, Argentina's striker, a man who wasn't even supposed to be there. He arrived as a backup for the backup because Argentina's first-choice striker, Roberto Tucherio, has suffered a severe anxiety attack before the tournament. Stabile stepped in, his first game for Argentina at the World Cup, a hat-trick against Mexico, his first cap. He'd never worn the shirt before that day. He goes on to score 8 goals in 4 games, the first top scorer in World Cup history, a record that stood until 1954. A man who almost didn't make the trip, a man who almost didn't even start, and he never played for Argentina again. Then, another absurd moment, Argentina versus France. The game is still live, and suddenly the referee blows the final whistle. Now late? Early. Think 2 minutes early. France is furious. Marcel Angeli, excuse my French, is clear through on go when the whistle goes. Imagine being at the first World Cup ever and the referee ends your match with the winning moments still alive. This is the Wild West of football, and it's only the group stage. Now, let's move forward to the same final, your very own USA against Argentina. A brawl breaks out on the pitch, and the American medical trainer Jack Cole sprints on to treat an injured player. He's running so fast he drops a glass bottle from his coat pocket, a bottle of chloroform. Shadows on the ground, he bends down, inhales the fumes, and collapses, completely unconscious, right there on the pitch. They carried him off on a stretcher. The trainer needed more medical attention than the player he came to treat. Even that isn't the wildest part of these tournaments. Now finally, the final. Uruguay against Argentina, the 2 biggest rivals in South America football, playing for the first World Cup trophy in history. The tension is so extreme that 300 armed soldiers surround this pitch before a single ball is kicked. And before the match even begins, the 2 teams argue about the ball. Argentina wants to use their ball, Uruguay wants to use theirs. Neither side will budge. So, the referee makes the only call he can. Argentina's ball for the first half, Uruguay's ball for the seconds. A World Cup final played with 2 different balls. Speaking of the referee, nobody wanted that job either. Belgium official Jean Langenieux only agreed to officiate on one condition: a boat ready and waiting at the harbor within 1 hour of the final whistle. in case of a riot broke out. The organizers agreed. The May referred the most important match in football history. In a jacket and tie, he sprinted straight to the harbor the moment it ended. Uruguay come from behind to win 4-2 in the second half with their own ball. The man who scored the final goal to seal the championship is Atto Castro, nicknamed Al Manco, the one-armed man. Castro lost his right forearm in a childhood accident with an electric saw at the age 13. He played the entire tournament, is scored in the group stage, and then is scored the final goal of the first ever World Cup final with one arm. Now, Jules Rimet walks onto the pitch, reaches into the same leather suitcase he carried across the Atlantic, and hands the gold trophy to the champions of the world. Today, we watch the World Cup on 4K screens with 48 teams, private jets, and billion-dollar broadcast deals. All of it traces back to this: a handful of sick players on a rocking boat, a king who picked his squad like a fantasy football team, a referee who ended a match 6 minutes early, another referee who only took the job because a boat was waiting for his escape, and a one-armed striker who scored the very last goal. That's how football's greatest stage was born. Now with perfection, with absolute chaos.